Ohio State will always be the measuring stick for Penn State. No matter what Penn State wants to accomplish in a given season, it's going to have to get over the hump against Ohio State to accomplish those goals. And what we saw Saturday night at an mostly empty Beaver Stadium, as it is now after the game, was an Ohio State team that's just significantly better than Penn State on both sides of the ball. Now, Ohio State comes out, they start off the game with a 62-yard play, get right into scoring position, score a touchdown a few plays later. Penn State goes for it on fourth down on its first possession, fails, and Ohio State scores 5 plays later. It's 14-0, less than 7 minutes into the game. I, for one, think that it was a bad mistake by James Franklin going for it on fourth down. Now, let me get into this real quick, because just because a decision doesn't work doesn't always mean it's a bad decision. We have that thing going in sports where what might look like a good decision, if it backfires, people criticize the coach, and that's not really fair sometimes. Me, for one, personally, and so I have a little bit of a hard time doing this, I like going for it. I like going for it in strategic situations a lot. I'm a big believer in the book that says, if you're facing fourth and less than 3, and you're beyond your 40, there's a good chance you should go for it. Okay. But I take a step back here, and I think going for it on the first offensive possession that Penn State had was a mistake for this reason. Ohio State had just scored, boom, 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 real quick on you. They had a lot of momentum. Game time situation. Yes, I like going for it a lot. But in going for it from your own 45 there, that is a massive, massive, massive risk reward. You're already down 7-0. Then you give Ohio State the ball right back at the 45, and boom, right then after, a couple minutes later, you're down 14-0. You want to hear something interesting? In the last 53 and a half minutes of this game, Penn State outscored Ohio State 25-24. From the time it was 14-0, Penn State outscored Ohio State the rest of the game. So while I can say Ohio State is a significantly better team, and Justin Fields, we'll get to him in a second, was fantastic, Penn State played pretty well the rest of the game, especially in the second half. Not great in the first half, especially offensively. But that 14-0 deficit doomed Penn State for the night. And so that's why I think the fourth down call, and again, in a lot of situations, I like going for it. If that had been the first possession of the game and Ohio State had not already scored, I'd be okay with Penn State going for it on fourth down. But you're already down 7-0. You go for it, you fail, Ohio State gets the ball, and boom, now you're down 14-0. And the game is over. The game is essentially over at that point, down 14-0 against that team with Justin Fields. All right, so bad decision. I didn't like that. Let's give credit to the opponent. Justin Fields is amazing. 28 of 34. More than 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, and for the season, man, that guy, 20 of 21 last week, 28 of 34. He has 6 touchdowns this season. He has 7 incompletions. Justin Fields, by the way, once committed to Penn State before decommitting back in June of 2017. What might have been if Justin Fields would have come to Penn State. All right, so it's a loss. Penn State's 0-2, no running game. Sean Clifford did better in the second half. Jahan Dotson with a really, really good game. That's one of the biggest takeaways of this game for Penn State. They found maybe their number one receiver, and that is Jahan Dotson. 8 for 144, 3 touchdowns, including the incredible one-handed grab, which was phenomenal. So those are some positives to take out of the game for Penn State. But they're now 0-2. And so this is where leadership on a team and in a program really comes into play. Sean Clifford talked about it after the game. You want to be around people right now that have your eye on your eyes are focused, you're ready to go, and you're ready to turn this around. Penn State did enough the last 2.5 quarters of this game to make you think, okay, maybe they can get some things figured out. Michigan lost to freaking Michigan State today. At one point this week, Michigan was a 24.5 point favorite against Sparty, and they lost at home to a bad Michigan State team. I thought Penn State would lose to Michigan down the road, but, hey, Penn State made some strides. Penn State's not in the business of moral victories. Penn State's not. Sean Clifford didn't come here to hang with Ohio State, he said. He came here to beat Ohio State. Well, that didn't happen. Didn't come close to happening tonight because Ohio State is an elite program and Penn State's not. And that's just the way it is. If Justin Fields had come to Penn State, could Penn State be elite right now? Hey, that guy's phenomenal. He's the front runner for the Heisman right now with Trevor Lawrence out with COVID, missing the Notre Dame game next week. Justin Fields has to be a leading contender for the Heisman. But what Penn State needs to figure out is what it did well in the second half. The offense started clicking a little bit. They found some rhythm. The receivers got going. The running game almost non-existent tonight. That's going to be a problem. It's just going to be a problem when you're down to a third-string running back and then a couple of freshmen. So, a tough, disappointing loss tonight. I said this all last week. Penn State is not as good as we thought it would be a few weeks ago. It's just not, folks. You lose Micah Parsons, you lose Journey Brown, you lose Noah Cain, and you still expect to be as good as you thought you would be a couple months ago? No, it doesn't work that way. That's 3 of the team's 4 best players. This was a great team out here tonight, Ohio State. That's a team that could go on and compete or win the national championship, and they're just better than Penn State. But Penn State did enough over the last 2.5 quarters, I think, to take some positives out of this game. Have a good night, folks.